The debate isn't whether to buy or rent. It's why the middle class is the only group whose hard work consistently funds someone else's passive income. Let's look at the global data. Welcome to the Great Urban Treadmill. Whether you are sipping an overpriced flat white in a glass cabin in Bengaluru's outer ring road, or finishing a 14-hour shift in a Canary Wharf skyscraper, or even doing the midnight shift for an EST-aligned project in Gurgaon, the math remains suspiciously the same. You are the protagonist of a very expensive financial horror story.
You spend your peak productive years, the years where your neuroplasticity is highest and your caffeine tolerance is at its peak, trying to decide which set of chains feels more like jewelry. In the red corner, we have renting, the modern nomad's choice that feels like freedom but tastes like throwing money into a black hole. In the blue corner, we have owning, the settled life that is actually a 20-year leverage play where the bank is the only one guaranteed to win. Today, we're going to dissect the rent versus retain math, but we're not just looking at Excel sheets. We're looking at the architecture of a system designed to ensure that no matter what choice you make, the institutional machinery, the banks, the developers, and the paxman, gets its pound of flesh.
Let's talk about the Indian professional standard. In India, property isn't just an asset, it's a theological requirement. From the moment you clear your first appraisal, the societal pressure to get on the ladder begins. It starts at the family dinner table and ends in a developer's sales office that smells like premium incense and desperation. But here is the factual reality. The residential rental yield in major Indian cities like Mumbai or Bangalore hovers between 2 to 3%. Meanwhile, your home loan interest rate is probably sitting comfortably at 8.5 to 9.5%. If you were running a business with those margins, you'd be fired. Yet, in the name of emotional security, we call it an investment.
In the US or Europe, the yields might be higher, 4 or 5%, but the property taxes and maintenance costs act like a slow-moving virus on your equity. The system is rigged because of the concept of opportunity cost. If you take that massive 50 lakh or 1 crore down payment and put it into a diversified equity portfolio, the historical data suggests you would outperform real estate over 20 years. But the system doesn't want you to do that. Why? Because you can't live in an index fund. The system wins either way. If you rent, you are subsidizing the mortgage of a high net worth individual or a pension fund. You are essentially paying for the privilege of not having to fix a leaky faucet, while simultaneously ensuring your landlord's retirement is more comfortable than yours. In cities like New York or London, institutional landlords like Blackstone are the ones on the other side of your monthly wire transfer. In India, it's often the generation that bought land in the 90s for the price of a Maruti 800 and is now charging you your entire half-yearly bonus for a 2 BHK with partial pool view. But if you buy, you become the bank's favorite employee. For the first 7 to 10 years of a standard 20-year EMI, you aren't even paying off the house. You are paying off the interest. You are working for the bank. You are a debt servicing machine disguised as a homeowner. The ironies of urban infrastructure only add salt to the wound. You pay a premium to live near the tech park, yet you spend 2 hours a day in a traffic jam that looks like a dystopian parking lot just to get to a desk where you do Zoom calls with people who live in a different time zone. The value of the property is tied to the proximity to work, but the work itself is increasingly digital. We are paying 2024 prices for 1950s physical presence requirements. Let's look at the history of this trap. Post-WW2, the suburban dream was a manufactured economic policy to drive consumption. In India, the post-liberalization boom created a similar myth, that your worth as a professional is measured by the square footage of your balcony. But the science of wealth accumulation tells a different story. True wealth is built on capital efficiency. The middle class, however, is taught to prioritize status over efficiency. We buy the biggest house we can afford, which maximizes the bank's interest income and minimizes our liquid capital. This is the retain trap. You retain the asset, but the asset retains your freedom. You can't quit a toxic job because of the EMI. You can't take a sabbatical to build that startup because the maintenance charges and property taxes are relentless. Now, let's pivot to the rent side. Proponents of renting often cite flexibility. But in a world where inflation is a feature, not a bug, your rent is a variable cost that only goes up. You are at the mercy of the market. The landlord can decide to sell or hike the rent by 15% because a new metro station was announced 5 kilometers away. You have no hedge against the rising cost of living. This is the rent trap. You are mobile, but you are also perpetually vulnerable. The system wins because it controls the land and the credit. Governments love homeowners because they are stable, taxable, and less likely to protest. They have too much to lose. Governments love renters because they drive the demand for urban development and keep the labor market fluid.
In the Indian context, we have unique nuances like the black money element in real estate, which artificially inflates prices beyond what the average white-collared professional salary can realistically sustain. This creates a gap where the capital value of a house is totally decoupled from its rental value. When you buy at these inflated prices, you aren't just buying a home, you are providing an exit strategy for someone else's shadow wealth. So, how do you actually win? You win by understanding the velocity of money. The wealthy don't buy homes, they acquire assets that produce cash flow, which then pays for their lifestyle. The middle class buys liabilities that they think are assets. To beat the system, one must look at the data objectively. If your rental yield is significantly lower than the cost of borrowing, which it is in almost every major Indian metro, then buying is a lifestyle choice, not a financial one. It is a consumption of a luxury item called permanence. If you can afford that luxury without compromising your freedom fund, do it, but don't call it an investment. On the flip side, if you rent, you must have the discipline to invest the difference between your rent and what an EMI would have been. Most people don't. They rent and then they spend the surplus on lifestyle inflation, the weekend getaways, the latest iPhone, the dining out. In that case, the forced savings of an EMI might have actually been better, even with the bank taking half.
The system wins because it bets on your lack of discipline and your desire for status. Whether it's the IST, EST, GMT collaboration dynamic that keeps you glued to your screen, or the quarterly reviews that determine your increment, the ultimate goal of the corporate urban life is to keep you as a high-functioning cog in a machine that fuels real estate and credit markets. In conclusion, the rent versus retain debate is a false dichotomy. The real math is about leverage versus liquidity. Are you leveraging your life to own a piece of concrete, or are you staying liquid but losing your edge to inflation? The system doesn't care which one you choose, as long as you keep running on the treadmill. To truly win, you have to stop looking at your home as your primary wealth builder and start seeing it for what it is, a service you pay for. Once you strip away the emotion, the math becomes clear. Wealth isn't about the title deed in your locker, it's about the time you own outside of your 9 to 9. Stop funding every